I think you're quite right. Travel can be wearing, yeah, unless you're quite hardy. And I don't think either of us are particularly hardy. We're luxury types, aren't we? We like comfort.
Orchids, Judith. We're orchids.
Yes.
Well, I certainly am.
Well, I was going to say I wouldn't go quite that far, but then you said you certainly are, so I'm going to agree with you.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Nicola, how are you? How's your week been?
Well, it's not been the week I expected, Judith, because I've been to Malta for a wedding and I didn't actually make it to the wedding, which is rather sad because we got out there. It was a friend of mine who I haven't seen for about 10 years. I've been friends since we were 15 and he's getting married. It's one of the first gay weddings on Malta, so it's a bit of an occasion. And he's marrying his long-term partner, Paul. They've been very happily living together, but Paul wants to make sure Michael's looked after in the event of his demise. So they are going through the civil ceremony, which is rather sweet, and he wanted me to be there because he hasn't got, an awful lot of friends that could make it out from the UK. So he said he would organise all the accommodation and everything, and so we just had to get ourselves there. In the end, my travelling companion was the stalwart Sarah, who is always good to travel with because she's non-dramatic, unlike myself, and very good at entertaining herself, so you never have to worry if she's having a good time or not. And she, she also goes off and does her own thing if she wants to, which is also good in a travelling companion. You don't have to worry about them. And we got there. He met us at the airport, and he took us to a rather lovely place in the middle of Malta in a big square, Queen Victoria Square. Anyway, lovely place. We were sitting outside having a drink, and then we went to a really splendid restaurant. This will make you laugh a lot. A really splendid restaurant called The Office, and it's named after Ricky Gervais's television series. But it's actually quite posh. It's quite posh now. It used to be just a normal little cafe, but it's worked its way up into fine dining. And as we were sitting there, it was quite quiet, this place, and we were sitting there just, perusing our menus. And a big bunch of rather attractive young people came in and sat at the table next to us, but they were all humming under their breath. I thought, oh my God, there must be singers. So when one sat next to me, he said, I leant over and I said, excuse me, are you singers? He said, yes, he says in a very fabulous Italian accent. He says, yes, we are singers. We've been doing the St. John's Passion at the church over there. And I said, oh, it's classical. And he said, yes, it is classical. I said, I wonder if my sister's a singer. I wonder if you know her. And because she does sing around the world and do a lot of this stuff. And he said, oh, who does your sister sing for? I said, Monteverdi Choir. He said, Monteverdi Choir, best choir in the world. And you're going to enjoy the accents through this. The case may be. Anyway, Monteverdi Choir, best choir in the world. He says, oh, Raffaello sang for Monteverdi Choir. Raffaello. Here, this lady, her sister, sings for the Monteverdi Choir. And Raffaello stood up and says, oh, who is your sister? I said, Heather Cairncross. He said, Heather Cairncross, she was my mentor in the Monteverdi Choir. And I've completely dissolved into, my God, the full place, isn't it? There's 20 singers sitting around going, oh, Heather Cairncross, yes, you told her, Lady Heather Cairncross, that you called her. And anyway, so my rabbit arrived at this point, rabbit a la local style. And so I tried to eat that for a minute, and I thought, no, I'm going to have to just ring Heather and tell her. So I managed to get, after several attempts, I managed to get Heather on the phone and put her on the phone to Raffaello, her long-lost mentee.
The world is a small place. There's a programme on Radio 4. It briefly went onto television as well. It's called I've Never Seen Star Wars, and you're supposed to confess on this programme the things that you've never done that the rest of the world has done. I've never seen The Office.
Well, I don't think I have seen a whole episode because I didn't like it very much, to be honest.
No, exactly. But it went on to be a massive global success.
I know. I'm not comfortable with spoofs. I find them deeply disconcerting. And yeah, but it was really, really weird that you randomly go to a place that you've never gone to in your life. You'll probably never go there again.
Well,
in a restaurant on the same night.
Yes and no. I'm reminded of the story where me and Sarah were in the Giant Stadium in New York, and she went off and found somebody who knew you from online, if you remember, amongst 5,000 Americans. Nicola. He had to be brought back to meet you, not Nicola, and it was all very exciting. And but I think the thing that you've all got going for you, not to diss Heather's singing, which, as you know, I'm a big fan of hers, is you've got a very memorable surname, haven't you?
It does help, that's for sure. Yes. Yeah. Unless people associate you with the Burgess McLean scandal, you're fine.
Okay.
Because he was the fifth man, Cairncross.
Oh, was he? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, that's a good claim to fame.
Well, yes. There's also Francis Cairncross, who is a well-known economist. So I generally tend to align myself to that side of the family. Rather than an international spy. But it was just a wonderful thing, and Heather was so, because I took selfies of me and the whole team and
yes.
put them on Facebook, which was just the most marvelous thing. It was a really lovely, life affirming moment. And we had this really sweet little apartment overlooking Malta Harbour, and Malta itself, we were in Valletta. Malta itself is an interesting place because a lot of it looks like it has been bombed quite extensively, which it was, but Valletta is actually very, very, very beautiful indeed, with lots of up and down hills, Judith. I found out exactly how unfit I was walking around Valletta. but yeah, no, the first part of the trip was great, and I'll tell you about the second part of the trip next week, I think.
Okay, very cool.
So what about you? What have you been up to while I've been away?
Well, actually, it's what I've been up to since you've been back, because you were back sooner than we expected. Well, we've had 4 days holiday, haven't we, which has been absolutely lovely. I've done nothing. I did nothing. I repelled all borders. I spent 4 days at home by myself. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but there's absolutely nothing I would rather do. To have 4 days off after January, February, March, which for me are the three toughest months of the year because they're cold and dark and long, and it was just lovely to have to do absolutely nothing. And I thought,
tell me how you do that. What does nothing look like for you? Because I can't imagine it.
Oh, sleeping. A box set of Suits. Well, I don't have a box set because that would count as clutter. I stream it online. Reading. Not very much time on the computer, and my clients were very low maintenance over the holiday. There was no, masses of amounts of activity on Facebook groups or anything like that. Looking out of the window, enjoying the sunshine. Looking at Easter treats. Well, I'm very urban. I don't really like the world very much. I did go and do a little walk around my garden yesterday, which was quite nice, and I might do it again today because the weather's lovely. But thinking. So, for instance, as you know, my 60th birthday is looming, and I had a bit of a weird thought at some point in the last couple of weeks, which is I realised I haven't given any thought at all, none, zero, nada, zilch, to how I want to live the rest of my life. So taking some time off gave me some reflection. Would the rest of my life be another version of what's gone before? Or would it be completely different? Or would I only take the good bits with me? I have to say I haven't come up with the answers yet because 60 years of thinking cannot be done in 4 days. But I began thinking. And I did get a couple of phone calls saying, do you want to go out to play? No, thanks. I turned people down. I just wanted to be peaceful.
As I'm listening to you, it ties back to what we talked about last week, which is taking time off and feeling, do you feel guilty? Do you worry you won't be able to come back up to speed again?
Yeah.
How did you feel after the 4 days?
Well, surprisingly gung-ho for it on Tuesday morning, actually, as I knew I would, because it was just total refreshment. I think the thing that is not refreshing is the half on, half off. I think if you go to the opposite extreme, which is, I'm not going to even do clients on Saturday morning, which I often do. I'm not going to. I think, people who were more extroverted than me, my family invited me over and I said no. And somebody said, do you want to go up to one of the street markets in London? No. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to see anybody. I just wanted, and I didn't want the time to run out when it could be just me. I really like, this is going to sound balmy, living inside my own head and just not having too much external noise, traffic, distraction, really. So it gave me a brilliant opportunity to do that. It happened to be called Easter. It's not relevant to me, particularly that it was Easter. But there's something that happens in the UK quite often. I don't know if you've noticed this, but we are frequently, whenever Easter comes, and it moves all the time, we are frequently blessed with out-of-season sunshine for Easter weekend. And this was no exception. We had some fantastic weather here, and it goes on this week as well.
Yeah, we sat in the garden. We had the whole gang over, the family gang, for lunch on Monday, and Sarah went out and gave the little yard some TLC, and we all sat out there waiting for the dinner to cook. It was lovely.
Yeah, cool. Well, there we go. That's thinking and relaxing has been my week. So now, Nicola, tell me, what's fueled your fire this week?
Well, what's fueled my fire has been being grateful to be home. And it's interesting how much I've designed my environment to support me in the work I do. And when you go out of that environment, it's quite a shock, not least when you end up with internet that doesn't work. It's interesting what everyone else's idea of internet is that doesn't work online. Basically, their idea of internet is being able to connect to something on their phone. Whereas my idea is to be able to get the laptop that I bought especially for these 3 trips I've got coming up, out and connect it to the internet. But unfortunately, the internet was only accessible by the laptop in the furthest corner of the apartments we were in, not anywhere near the table where you could actually sit and work. So little tiny things like that have fueled my fire this week, because I had to come home early because I got some horrendous chest infection and I was being eaten alive by mozzies, but that was a thing I could have dealt with. But I got a horrendous chest infection. We ended up coming home early because the environment was not supportive, not only to working, but to human life generally. You go to a hot country and you expect it to be warm at least, but then, you just forget that the other warm countries have off seasons as well, and we arrived in a time when there was a howling gale on the third day, and overnight I was very, very miserable indeed, being sick and cold and in somewhere that didn't work. Even didn't work from the point of view of getting a cup of tea. It was so being home and in my home environment again is making me feel very fueled up to do my best work, because I've got no excuse and no reason not to. The environment has been designed to support me 100% here.
Yeah, good point. And I think, well, we'll talk about this later, but I've got some ideas on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, cool.
So you're just very grateful to be home.
Yes, and it's just little things, like your bed and your table and the kitchen, the proximity of the kitchen. I know it sounds dark, but when you've been without it for even 3 or 4 days, you just get home and everything that looked a bit shabby and a little bit worn and a little bit not quite good enough just now looks like utter luxury.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Oh, that's wonderful. And that's what they mean by travel broadens the mind, Nicola.
I'm highly grateful for my little house. That's what I'm grateful for. What about you? What's fueling your fire this week?
Well, I did an uncharacteristic thing for me. I asked my clients in my little coaching group, which is called Small Business Big Magic, for some feedback. I asked the newer members and the more active members to send me a few words to describe what they liked about it. And it's not something I generally do, because I'm always nervous people are going to say, I don't like, tell me what's wrong with it, which I'm a little bit sensitive about. But they gave me 3 pages of wonderful material, which is very helpful. And the reason I asked was I wanted to know what the client experience was, but I had half a mind to rewrite the sales letter with it. It wasn't that I was trying to get testimonials per se, so much as the user experience, and I was overwhelmed with what they sent me back. And And of course, we're talking with fueling your fire. We're talking about what it is that excites us and facilitates us in our work. And I was very glad I did something brave and unusual.
Yeah, that's marvellous. It's a bit like, when you invite opinion, people often feel they have to give a critical one, don't they? Because they're being helpful. But by asking, by being very specific and asking what they liked about it, you were leading them in the right direction while still giving them the option to say whatever they liked.
I certainly can't remember how I worded it, but that was probably what I did. Yes, and it's still surprising, isn't it? Because you can never see the world through another's eyes, can you? The quote about walking a mile in somebody else's shoes, somebody else's moccasins. Yeah, it was useful to have, and it's going to help me freshen up my sales page, which I may even do today.
But first, a word from our sponsors.
Do you feel isolated and alone in running your own home-based business? Do you have worries, doubts, fears and resistance which sometimes make you feel like giving up? Don't worry, you're not alone. In fact, you're perfectly normal. It can be scary all by yourself. But what if you could learn how to become a confident business owner, how to trust yourself more and grow your income, relax and be more creative and productive? Small Business Big Magic is a unique business mentoring group providing grounded practical support and advice, fast responses to your questions, inspiration and solutions to boost your clarity and help you find direction, focus and success in your life and business. Join Small Business Big Magic today for the friendship and encouragement of others just like you and the enthusiasm of a coach who gets you and your business. There's big magic for your small business at judithmorgan.com.
What's our client challenge of the week this week then, Judith?
Well, I think we should go with something that you've inspired me to think about, actually, which is you and I both work online because somewhere in our heart of hearts we want to be able to live the laptop lifestyle. But you've had a go at it in the last week and it wasn't all it's cracked up to be. So I thought we might talk about the pros and cons of the laptop lifestyle, the truth versus the dream, and how we could make it work for ourselves and other people.
Yeah, I mean, interesting timing this because I've got two friends, Michael and his wife, who I met on the cruise, and they have literally just sold everything, and they are embarking on a year of travelling around the world. Now they do have a good income from their business, and they are very successful, so money isn't an issue. And now they've lowered their overheads dramatically because they've sold 2 cars, they've got rid of a house, and all that stuff. But they're going to be traveling the world using Airbnb and things like that. And that's one of the things that we didn't do. I left the booking of my accommodation to my friend who operates from a place of everyone's skin and everyone needs to do everything on the cheap all the time. Whereas the contrast was that Paul's daughter is someone very well known who operates in the fashion space in London. And whenever she comes in to visit him, she stays at the top luxury hotel on the island. But it never occurred to Michael that we might want to stay in something, a bit more upmarket. He put us in the cheapest, nicest accommodation he could find. So that was interesting. And the other thing is, whenever I go to places like America, I never have any problem with internet at all. The hotels there expect clients to want high-speed internet, and you connect all over the hotel. I mean, I worked in my bedroom when I went on the cruise. I worked in the lounge. I worked in the restaurant and the bar. We were all working from our laptops. And then you get on the ship, of course, and there's no the internet is not only expensive, but it's very, very slow and only works in the early morning. But that's sort of part of the fun of the Internet Marketers Cruise. You're supposed to get away from your work for a week and actually meet people and network. But then when I went to Greece, it took 3 weeks to get the internet installed in the house I was living in, and I had to walk down the road to my friend Elias's office where there was internet in order to work there. So I think it's very hit and miss, and you've really got to have a backup plan, because what I found was not getting online when I needed to or when I expected to or when my team needed to so I can answer questions, because I'm going to talk about my team a bit more in who or what's impressed, but I've got a new team, and because I wasn't there to answer questions, they just at the right time they were muddling along without me. So I think There is a list. There is a website actually. I'll find it and put it on the show notes of the best places to work in the world from the point of view of cheapest living and best internet, because the internet is actually the crucial thing, really. There's lots of lovely places in the
Yeah.
world, and there's lots of hotels in the world, and lots of Airbnb specify whether they've got internet. But the question is it good
Yes.
enough? Is it fast enough? And does it reach
Yeah.
the neighbour where you'd like to work?
Yes. And is it wireless so you can get your gadget hooked up to it? Because I remember the first time we went to my Caribbean island, it wasn't. And so I actually had to buy a month's usage, which was sort of island wide from the local computer shop, which worked. But, the landlord's interpretation of what was the internet and mine was not. But it's always worked. It's always worked subsequently. But I think that what we take for granted in the UK and the USA and certain places like that is not the norm in the world, where it's a happy accident and privilege to be able to dial up. But and I remember as well the first time I was in my Caribbean island, where I realised that these are risks, the same risks that you had when you went to Greece. Is that I remember there was no internet one day, and somebody said somebody's put a shovel through the cable from Puerto Rico. It'll be fixed in the next 3 days. That's not what we expect. In London, if I turn the switch off at the wall, it notifies the the local thing, and it's all sorted again within 60 seconds. And so it's about expectation a bit, isn't it? And hotter places in the world, it's all a bit manana, which is part of the appeal of it, if we can relax into it. So how do you think people manage who are constantly on the move? So this couple that you've just described, it's part of the fun, but the fun's going to be quite challenging, isn't it? If the first thing that you need to do everywhere you go is set up home, get comfy, have a nice bed. I think that's it. When you were talking about I'm home and I'm grateful, I think we can make a home. There would be my first criteria. Can I make a home anywhere else? And what constitutes a home? And it's a degree of comfort and utility and ease and facility and that sort of thing.
And lack of insects.
Well, I think anywhere you want to travel to comes with insects, but as long as you've got the precautions,
the appropriate things, yes, like the plug-in anti-mozzie thing. Because we were, 2 nights our sleep was totally disturbed by this one mosquito who was feasting on me and largely ignoring Sarah. But he did used to buzz her in the ear occasionally, just to notice how I say it's a he, buzz her in the ear occasionally just to make her wake up in a start. The other thing is, the ironic thing was I went to Greece back in 2003 when I had the hotel for a month, and I used to sit on my balcony typing up my newsletter, and then I would connect to my phone to the internet and I would send my newsletter out, and it cost about £500 a month, but it was worth it just to have that connection. So in a way, going somewhere where the landlord says it's connected is, you've got to have a backup. And in England, I've got what's it called? It's a 3 dongle, and it actually connects up to 5 people to high-speed internet, and you buy it pay as you go. So if I'd have been in the UK, and there must be solutions like that in each country you go to, mustn't there?
There's a thing you can buy in England. I helped a friend buy it once. We went on a drive by all of the Vodafone shops in South London, because she was trying to get her hands on something called a MiFi, which I think is a sort of mobile. She goes to Spain to visit her mother a lot and can't get online at her mother's house for obvious reasons, so she has to go to the golf club and the coffee shop, and that's not always convenient, especially since she doesn't drive. But there are various solutions to these. I still think they're a bit hit and miss, but it's an odd first world problem, this, isn't it? That the expectation that we want to be online wherever we are in the world, but we also want to operate from places that have other appeals.
Yeah, and Chris Barrow seems to be able to get connected wherever he is, wherever he's travelling all over the country. But he's obviously got everything set up to work together, and he's used to, improvise. He does sometimes moan about the Virgin Wi-Fi on the trains, but that's the worst it gets. But then when he goes to Africa, I think he actually just unplugs for a week or two, doesn't he? When he goes on holiday, he just
yes.
Yeah.
But we do follow people online, don't we, who are living the laptop lifestyle, and we want it, at least in part, if not in 100%. And I see them travelling and fighting through these battles, and I know I've got a bit of it ahead in my life, but I think you're right. Something often happens that makes you realise how grateful you are for the creature comforts we take for granted at home.
Yeah, when we're only a few hundred years away from living in caves, so it must be that it's something to do with the familiarity of our own cave, because someone else might look at my cave and think it's completely unlivable in,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like this chap's daughter who only stays in 5-star hotels. She'd probably take one look at my house and think, oh, I can't stay here. It's just completely not good enough.
I think the point you made about your friend's assumption about you wanting the cheapest reminded me when I was a travel agent. That was a lesson we learned when we were a travel agent, because we were much younger, and all we'd ever really known at that stage in my life was of affordable travel. And we made this erroneous assumption that every client of the travel agency would want the cheapest. Not at all. Some people want to pay through the nose for the top-notch luxury experience, and who can blame them? And hurrah! Speaking as their travel agent, hurrah!
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, well, on the way back, we discovered, excuse me, on the way back, we discovered that you could actually get in a taxi on Gozo, and they would drop you at the airport, and they would actually take you through the ferry in their car with all your suitcases in the boot. Whereas on the way out there, it took 3 times as long. We were struggling on and off things with our suitcases, and it was all, really hard work. Whereas on the way back, it wasn't at all. Excuse me.
Money talks, doesn't it? You can get anything if you're prepared to shell out for it. And I think that's something. Well, there are 2 lessons I'm learning from your stories are, what can I get if I'm prepared to pay for it? And never assume. Your friend assumed, that you were looking at the world through the same lenses as he is, and you're not.
So yes, so I think the lessons we've learned from this are, before you go, make sure that you're going to be staying in accommodation that you've arranged. So take responsibility for your own thing. I did forget how blessedly flaky my friend was.
Yes.
And he's very reassuring about things, but he obviously had never seen the apartment that we were staying in before in his life, because he was walking around, as if he'd never been there. So he obviously hadn't. And so obviously his idea was just taking someone else's word for it that it was going to be good enough. So that's a lesson, is always take responsibility for your own travel arrangements. Have some sort of backup Wi-Fi, mobile connection sorted. So, for example, I could have sorted something at the airport in Gozo, in Malta. I could have gone and bought a card for my phone that gave me internet connection. It's about thinking ahead, I think, to the minimum requirements and making sure they're in place, or a backup plan is too.
Well, I think it'd be interesting for us to look at this website that you're talking about, that talks about the best places in the world and the Wi-Fi and so forth, because if it's not on there, it should be some sort of checklist that you'd get rather good at, I think, if you were a regular traveller, about your minimum requirements. And I imagine that if travel was important to you, you might let some of those other things slip down your list of importance. We'll see. I don't know. Let's keep an eye on this, and let's look out for people who do it well, because I think we all work online, and we want some of this some of the time, don't we?
Yeah, there's Natalie Sissons, the suitcase entrepreneur, who springs to mind straight away. But there are some very notable travel bloggers as well, people who travel. And I have actually heard about people. Sarah's very keen on this sort of thing. She passes some stuff over. There is, people who travel the world in their camper vans, and they've got actual satellite dishes on the roofs and things, so to enable their Wi-Fi connection. I don't know if I could live in a camper van, but a camper van with Wi-Fi would definitely get a better vote than one without.
Well, do you remember that our mutual hero Thomas Leonard lived in a massive RV, as they call them in America, recreational vehicle? I mean, it was, bigger than your house and mine stuck together, and very luxurious. So I think it could be possible.
It was a tour bus kind of thing, wasn't it? Like the band.
Yes, it was. Yes.
But then he did move into an apartment in the end, didn't he? So must have got a bit wearing.
Yes, I think so. I think you're quite right. Travel can be wearing, unless you're quite hardy. And I don't think either of us are particularly hardy. We're luxury types, aren't we? We like comfort.
Orchids, Judith. We're orchids.
Yes.
Well, I certainly am.
Well, I was going to say I wouldn't go quite that far, but then you said you certainly are, so I'm going to agree with you. So, Nicola, do you have a word of the week after all your journeying?
I'm cheating again, I'm afraid. It's 2 words, but simple systems. So systems is the one, really. As you know, the business is growing fast, and I've taken on a couple of people I used to work with in Raw, again, as well as Sarah helping me on a regular basis now. And we are endeavouring to put systems into place for onboarding new clients from an admin and finance point of view, and onboarding new clients from a Facebook ads point of view. What's that noise?
It's my boiler. So sorry, it's turned off, but it yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, okay, fine. So we're experimenting with different bits of software, and I keep hearing about Trello and Slack. So we're using Slack, which is absolutely brilliant, which is a communication tool for teams where you discuss things in channels. So you set up a channel for each client, for example, or something like the podcast, and you discuss that, and you can actually attach links to external documents and things like Google Docs, or if you attach a link to YouTube, it will actually bring the video into Slack. You don't need to click the link and go off to YouTube to watch it. So
okay, nice.
Pretty good, and it cuts down your email dramatically, because when you think that everyone on a team always copies each other, and just to make sure that everyone's seen it. The other thing is it's highly keyword searchable. So Gmail I find quite frustrating to find things again if you don't remember exactly a key phrase that was in the email. So you can just go and look in the channel. You can do a keyword search and it will bring up any mention of that thing. So that's working. But Trello, we haven't quite got to grips with yet. That's sort of a replacement for Basecamp, which is a project management tool, which I did like. But, I'm not a systems person, Judith. I'm a big picture thinker, but somehow I have the little jobs that need doing in my head within that big picture. So what Sarah's doing now is trying to drag out what I want to happen in each event, like a new client coming on board, for example, or what happens if a client's card gets declined in Facebook or something like that. So she's dragging out of me, which involves taking me to the kitchen, sitting me down and asking me lots of questions. And then she's going to try and turn it into checklists in Trello. And I'll report back on Trello on how we get on with that, whether, it's something that we carry on using or not. But it's interesting because also one of my clients woke up this morning in my membership site. She was having a rant about her VA, who previously done a job perfectly, now not doing it so well and screwing it up a bit for a couple of clients. And I just went back to her and said, the old Michael Gerber quote, people do the best they can in the absence of a good system. What system do you have in place for her knowing how to do it? Because if she's only doing the job once a month, she possibly forgot how it was supposed to be done if you didn't have a tick for her to follow. But it is painful for entrepreneurs to create systems, isn't it?
Oh, the word is anathema to me. I tell you what's interesting about the story you've just told. If I was creating something as marvellous as Slack sounds as it has the potential to be, I'm not sure I'd call it Slack. What a funny choice of name. It just Slack sounds like almost. Does it mean taking up the slack? Otherwise, I can't get the name of it at all. Why is it called Slack?
I don't know. All startups have to have one-word names, and they go through branding processes if they've got any money, and if they're not a funded startup, they just choose a word that seems appropriate. But it has to. They all have to have one-word names, or they're not a proper startup. So perhaps they they were just rootling about.
I do quite like a one-word name as it happens, but I think Slack just perhaps it has poor connotations for me. And I was reminded, it's quite important what you call things. I had a conversation in a group over the last 24 hours about somebody who'd never been on Airbnb, because she'd assumed from its name it was all about bed and breakfast, and she wasn't interested in bed and breakfast.
Well, the other one was I've got clicksandleads.com, and then when I was looking for a name for the mentoring side of it, I came up with clicksleadsandsales.com. But the other option, which shortens to CLAS, which is quite nice, class. But then the other option was clicksleadsandprofits.com, which a branding friend of mine very kindly pointed out was shortened down to clap. So he said only the Brits will get it, but you still can't call your business.
There's always the risk, I think, whatever you call it, that somebody will find the joke or the innuendo in it.
So systems is the word of the week, and I'm struggling, but working with someone who is very systematic herself and does very good, tasks. She does all our podcasts for us, and that's a series of tasks. But I used to be very good at setting up systems in jobs, but not ever very good at following them.
So my word of the week is subscription, and your use of the word onboarding makes me suspect you've probably read the book that I've been emailing you about all week called The Automatic Customer. Have you read that?
Oh, I've got it on order. It's on its way.
Oh. It's now interesting because they use that. I don't like the way Americans make verbs out of words, onboarding and deplaning and things. But anyway, we'll let that pass for the moment. But the book, which was recommended to me by a client, and then I thought, I wonder if Nicola's recommended this to me before. Anyway, it's a fast read, and it's about creating a business on a subscription model. And one of the examples that he gives in the book is how a firm of accountants transformed their cash flow by converting their customers to paying by monthly standing order. Well, I did that with my business before I sold it. So I've 20 years experience of doing that. And the cleaning business, as you know, is a subscription model. And the money gym was a subscription model. Both of my coaching groups now are subscription models. And lots of my clients are moving towards wanting to create a subscription model. And you see it, you know how, you didn't notice any blue cars until you decided to buy one. It's the same. Now that I've read that book, everywhere I go, I see people, implementing the subscription model. And you and I have talked about it on these podcasts with, I think you call it software as a service, don't you? Which he talks about in the book as well. So you'll enjoy that as well. It opens up your eyes to how many different ways this can work. And it is something you and I have been looking for ourselves and for our clients for a very long time, because it's the end of feast and famine, because your income comes in every month.
Yeah, and it's Steve, our mutual friend who does web design. He's finally implementing this in terms of looking after people's websites, in terms of the plugin updates and the security updates and all that stuff.
Yeah,
and it's building up very nicely for him. It can put people off, because I'm about to hire someone who's going to do a one-off task for me, integrating my membership site with my payment gateway, and they're trying to say it's $799 a month thereafter, and I'm thinking, well, what will I get for my $99 a month? And that is the one thing that's holding me back from signing up. But the other thing,
I think you're right with that. It can be very off-putting. The book discusses that quite a lot. But it's all to do with the value proposition, isn't it? If the value derived is more than the monthly subscription, then it's not an issue. Really.
Well, that would be my question to him today: is what do I get for my $99 a month? And if it sounds like a good value, I'll go for it. The other thing is about playbooks. This is because I'm really following a lot of startup podcasts, because I love the idea of a fast-growing business, one that can be sold and one that is on automatic, recurring billing, as they call it. And a lot of software companies talk about having their playbooks out in public. And in fact, one of our biggest digital marketing agencies on the South Coast, Egg, they in Worthing, they've got what they call their playbook on their website, which is literally a page that just describes to the clients what's going to happen to them once they decide to go with them as a digital marketing agency. And apparently it's very reassuring for clients to know what exactly step by step what's going to happen to them once they decide to go with you as a company. And it's something that I've traditionally been very bad at. Marion, do you remember Marion used to tell me, it's confusing for the customer in the money gym, what's going to happen next. Always tell me what's going to happen next. And I've always remembered that Marion used to say that, because apparently it does make the sale easier if customers who are a bit nervous or a bit detail orientated want to know what happens next.
Yes.
And I think you do it quite a lot, don't you, on your website? You tell people what will happen when they sign up.
I've written a blog post recently on this topic. Every time I get an inquiry from somebody, Margaret, our colleague in the money gym, is good at this as well. The mechanic people, the left-hand side people, they're very good at process, and they say annoying things to creators like us, like, well, how's that going to work? How's that going to work then? And we don't really know. But we do know when we've got something that, you do with your clients all the time. And so I've written blog posts. I want to overhaul my website, and listening to you say that, I do think that could be a useful thing to have on there. I mean, typically it's covered in FAQ, but FAQ is so dull and nobody reads that. Playbooks are a much more enticing word, isn't it?
Yeah, this is how we play here, if you've got to come and play with us.
Yuck to usage of play like that. I don't like that, but I know the rest of the world likes it much more than I do, so I'm going to shut up about that.
Yeah. The other thing I found is just putting I had to do a video on my membership site, because it was different software showing my customers how, my members how to use it. So I put the video on the front of the sales, the sales page, that where people can go and sign up. And I've definitely made sales since doing that I probably wouldn't have made otherwise, because people get to walk around the inside of the membership site and see the value before they sign up.
Yes, I think that's a nice idea, isn't it?
Yeah. It's quite a nice idea. It's easy to do as well, videos.
Who or what's impressed you this week, Nicola?
Well, my team have impressed me, my fledgling nascent team, who have muddled along in my absence rather marvellously, doing the best they can, definitely in the absence of a good system. And we were talking about this last night, because one of them is in Portugal and one of them is in England. And I've worked with both of them before, and they know how I work, and they're very patient, with the fact that I'm completely, not very good at systems and very big picture thinker and always want things doing, like yesterday. So having a team that knows you and your ways of working is quite valuable, I think. And also, we were saying that even though they might, Patricia's written English isn't, 100%, she's pretty good. Her spoken English is brilliant. But she has got such a willing attitude, and she'll get things done outside office hours if need be. I mean, I always say to her, leave it till Monday, but she doesn't. She does it over the weekend. So I think when you're putting a team together, attitude is so important, and a lot of people say that, a lot of people in the startup world hire for attitude because you can teach skills, but you can't. And I think Chris Barrow talks about this a lot, doesn't he, when he on his travels around the country staying in various hotels. If you've got someone with a bad attitude, then no matter how much you train them, they're never going to do you a good job for you.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yes, I mean, honestly, it's a natter to me. What's a bad attitude? I don't really, get a grip, people.
Well, it's people who have entitlement feelings, don't they? I'm here, and you're, therefore you should pay me, and I don't need to do it. I mean, again, Michael Gerber talked about this in his rather underrated second book, which was The E-Myth Manager. I loved it. It was all about how to recruit for attitude, how to do team interviews so that your time was limited and the stars shone through. You look people in the eyes and you can see a spark of life, and they're the ones who ask the questions and seem interested, and they're the ones to hire, even if they don't have the experience, because you can always train them.
Yes, perfect. I've had 2 men in my diary this week, which is it's rare. They're rarer than the women, but the 2 men have impressed me. Let me tell you why. They both already knew in their own minds what they were up to, but they'd been encouraged by the women in their lives to talk to me, which is fair enough. And they either already knew what they wanted to do, or they thought they were on the right track and they were just comparing notes with me. One was a young man in his early 20s who was a personal trainer, and he had 2 or 3 choices about, should he take physical premises in the UK, or should he take an opportunity to go overseas. And the other guy was somebody who had a lot of experience in one field, and he had spent a time out of it but was back in it again. And really, I just reinforced their own choices. I thought they were both on the right track. And usually I'm able to come up with other ideas or wrinkles that clients might not have thought about. But actually, I think just having your own decision-making processes reinforced by another person has a value.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's especially if the person you're getting the opinion from has done things that you want to do.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting that actually, my first thought was, well, I don't think I can help you. My second thought was actually just saying to you, I do what you're doing. In your circumstances, I do what you're doing, and you're on the right track. Has a reinforcement value that will make them, walk an inch taller, I think, and more confident. And of course, if you feel that, everything's likely to go a bit better. So I was impressed by 2 men who knew their own mind, but cross-referenced with somebody else who might have had a better idea. And I thought that's a good thing, isn't it? Just to turn up, and it's a sort of check in. Am I doing the right thing? And I thought that, the preparedness to ask for that, okay, nagged a bit by the women folk, but the preparedness to ask for it was a good thing. That impressed me.
It shows a remarkable open-mindedness, which You know, a lot of entrepreneurs are so driven and focused, they don't have that open-mindedness because they need to protect their drive and their focus. But the best entrepreneurs are always willing to learn from people who've had success and experience themselves. You know, I can't think that Rich Sheffrin wouldn't sit down with, you know, Donald Trump and learn a thing or two, you know?
Yeah. And actually, it wasn't coming from a place of doubt. Neither was it coming from a place of overconfidence. It was like a sort of health check in a funny sort of a way, and I enjoyed it.
Oh, marvellous. Well, there we go. Another week has flown past, geographically speaking, and time-wise as well.
In every sense, our week has flown.
Yeah, exactly. And I look forward to talking to you next week, and we can continue the saga.
Marvellous. Look forward to it. See you then.
Bye. You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.